Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome. We are officially live. Welcome to this very, very special event, the Creative Electroacoustic Immersion Program Showcase. I'm so happy to be here today, and I have 6 really amazing artists who are here live streaming with me today as well. They're currently backstage, but they're going to be joining us in just a few minutes. So today we are going to be sharing with you a really special showcase of brand new music that has been created by 6 musicians who were in the summer 2023 cohort of the Creative Electroacoustic Immersion program, also known as CEIP. These people, you're going to come to discover this on your own in just a few minutes, but these people are amazing. They are truly adventurous, thoughtful, extremely talented composers, performers, multimedia artists, and we've been working very, very closely together over the last 3 months inside of my creative mentorship program. So the plan for today is as follows. We're going to be hearing new music from Richard Lamphere, from Chris Leventis, Greg Menkoff, Bruce Reynoso, Dimitri Sarada, and from Sensor. And we're not only going to get to hear and see and experience their music, we're also going to get to talk directly with these artists and learn about their creative process and hear more about the concepts and the workflow and the ideas that they brought to their pieces. We're going to get to ask them some questions and generally just learn more about why and how they do the things that they do. So first, before we get started, I want to welcome everyone who's here tuning in live. I see you. Hello, hello. It's so great to see so many folks. Go ahead and say hi. Let us know where you're tuning in from if you haven't done that already. Welcome, Alan. Welcome, Waldo. Welcome, Howard. Hi, David. Hi, Rennie. It's so great to see you all. I see Howard is also saying, don't forget to smash that like button. Thanks, Howard. I appreciate that. It's so great to see you all here. And if you're watching this replay in the future, I welcome you as well. It's always wonderful to have you. And thank you so much for joining us for this musical celebration. So what we're doing today is really a celebration, as I just said. I want to give you a little bit of background, a little bit of context about how this all came about and kind of why we're doing this showcase. So inside of the Creative Electroacoustic Immersion program, I work with musicians of all different kinds to help them unlock their unique creative voices, to help them clarify their music making workflow and creative process, and ultimately to help them create and finish more music that they love and that feels like the truest expression of themselves. We work really closely together over the period of 3 months, and the result of that work, the music and the art that is created during that time frame is beautiful. It's truly, truly stunning. And so the whole idea behind this showcase is to gather everyone here, to celebrate everyone in this group, to share some of their music and to just, party a little bit and celebrate the amazing growth and the accomplishments that they've experienced over the last few months. So that's the goal for today. I hope that sounds great. And I'm so happy to have you all here. And another kind of side goal of this is for any of you who are watching who are musicians and creative people in your own way. And I can see just from the chat alone, I know a lot of you are. I hope that this will inspire you to maybe dig a little deeper into your own creative practice in whatever way that means to you. Maybe try something new, or maybe just take another risk or take another step toward your creative goals. All right. So with all of that said, we're going to go ahead and just jump right into things. The first piece that we are going to hear is called Reverse Nova Scotia, and this is by Richard Lamphere. So, what we're going to do is listen to the piece first, and then I'm going to bring Richard on screen so that we can chat a little bit more about his process. And as we're listening throughout this whole event, if any of you have questions of your own for the artist, you can go ahead and drop them in the comments, and I will relay them over to the artists. All right. So without further ado, we're going to listen to Reverse Nova Scotia by Richard Lamphere. All right, Richard. Huge round of applause. That was such a good way to kick this off. I cannot it was just like a positive vibe. I don't know. That's great. Thank you for that. I was sitting here
Good.
kind of bopping. I was off screen, so no one can see, but I was grooving the whole time.
Yeah, yeah.
What a beautiful piece.
Well, it's a waltz after all.
There you go. Yeah. I'm just gonna pull up a couple, little comments from the audience.
Uh,
Bravo, very impressive track. Lots of lots of applause. Yes, an immersive experience, Hans, I completely agree. So Richard, talk to us about this music. Can you tell us about how you made it or what instruments were involved in this process?
yeah, well, it was entirely made in the box, using mostly Arturia software synths, and also included a number of drum samples and a couple of field recordings. One of which was intentional, and the other was completely accidental. It was literally found sounds because you know how sometimes we make an accidental phone call on a phone. Well, this was an accidental voice memo recording, and so it ended up being sort of a lucky circumstance there. But I started the piece with I had an idea to write something about the rain because I think that the sound of rain is uniquely melancholy but happy kind of
Mhm.
experience. And so what I did was I deliberately went out and made a field recording of a rainstorm, and that recording runs through the entire piece. And one thing I found is that often, if you place an environmental recording underneath the music, you'll pick up a bit of the sort of emotional texture of that, even when it's subliminal within the piece, like it is mostly here. It sort of peaks out a few times in the middle, and then you really hear it at the end, where you know the rain continues, and there's sort of there's happens to be an airplane flying overhead and that. But the way I thought of it was to take that original field recording and decorate it. I wanted to try to stay away as much as possible from the idea of sort of having a motif and then kind of placing it into an arrangement. But I was really thinking of starting with this atmospheric recording and then placing elements on top of it and creating something that way. So that was pretty much how it was done. You know,
Yeah,
and once the basic structure kind of emerged, then you know all the rest of the kitchen sink stuff went on top
interesting.
of that.
It was so effective what you said about having that atmosphere in there. I mean, it
Mm.
really translated through, and I love that you were thinking about kind of a happy melancholy. That's exactly the vibe. It was
Yeah,
like a
yeah,
calm, spacious, happy
yeah. Well, I don't know if it's
feeling.
something to do with the fact that when we're listening to the rain, I think you know often we've made it to our safe place, right, where we've
Right.
gotten out of the rain, and so then we can sit and enjoy it. And that's the way I experience it, anyway.
Yeah, I completely can relate to that. I also love so much that you included the accidental field recording. It just
Yeah.
is such a nice way of, embracing accidents and embracing surprises in our music making, and sometimes I think I saw someone in the chat that said, "Here it is, happy accidents teach me that I may have been overthinking things, they can be the best." And
Yeah.
someone else, Key of D Music says, "Happy accidents are great, they can lead to breakthroughs." I completely agree.
Yeah, I think we almost have a duty to use them when they appear because good things almost always come from them.
That's such a great perspective though to have,
Mm.
to be like, "Whoop, I didn't mean that to happen, but let's explore it," as opposed to, "Oop, I didn't mean that to happen. That
Mm.
means I made a mistake."
Mhm.
Right?
Mhm.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Absolutely.
So, Richard, I know that you have been a musician for many, many years, playing in all kinds of different, bands and collaborative groups, and
Mhm.
that one of your goals in working together in CEIP, it was to explore some new directions for your solo music making, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
And developing a process that you could follow to create music, which you're clearly doing. I'm curious what you would say the biggest thing, or maybe the biggest things have been that have helped you in developing this new creative process for yourself.
Well, I think, being in the program, we've talked about a lot of sort of very practical approaches to the way that we think about our work, to the way that we, ideas that we can apply to our creative process to be able to sort of have the confidence in ourselves to put things out there, to create every day. And so I think that it's been very helpful to me to have a structure by which I could, sort of a parallel structure to my own work that I could just kind of have that little bit of push. But yeah, I think to be in an immersive uh, group with such talented composers as have been in here, and just kind of to be one of them and be accepted in this world, and like to be able to write stuff and have people listen to it, and you realize that you actually are making progress, and to get the feedback that we've had, all of that has been super valuable to me. And I don't think I'd been able to, this is one piece that I've created, but I've created a lot of other material in the last 3 months, and I don't think any of it would exist without this experience. And I'm just excited to continue on and use the kind of stuff that I've learned.
Yeah, I am so excited for you too. So, speaking of continuing on, can you give us a hint about future plans? Is
Um,
the
but yeah, I'm actually planning to release my first solo album,
very
and that's
exciting.
due February of 2024. Actually, this piece we just listened to will be one of the tracks of the album,
Amazing.
and yeah, there's a lot of stuff. I've got a lot of it rolling already. I'm excited to get it out there.
Yes. Okay, folks. So you heard it here. Stay tuned. February 2024. We're all going to be knocking on your
Mm.
your social media
Yeah,
door or something, waiting for
knock
that record.
away.
I can't wait. Thank you, Richard. Okay, we're going to bring Richard back in just a moment, but thank you so much and congratulations on this beautiful piece.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. And we're going to be bringing everyone back in a few minutes all together. So if there are questions that got put in the chat that we didn't get to right now, don't worry. We're going to do our best to get to them all in a few moments. But for now, we're going to move forward and listen to the next piece, which is going to be by which is by Chris Leventis. Now, I want to just tell you a little story, a tiny story before I play this piece for you to give you a little bit of context. So, Chris came into CEIP with a very specific and I think I can confidently say very ambitious goal. And this had to do with bringing his modular synthesizer out into nature and creating a site specific audio visual work. And what was really unique about Chris's goal is that he wasn't just interested in being inspired by the nature around him, but really, he was really interested in seeing how he could use the environment as part of his musical instrument. And I don't want to spill too many beans and like tell you all about it before we watch it, but I just wanted to kind of plant that seed. I think that's an appropriate pun. Can I get away with saying that? I wanted to give you a little bit of that frame before we listen. So we're going to take a listen now, and then I'll bring Chris up here on the screen so we can hear more about how it all works directly from him. All right, here we go. Ooh, okay.
Hey, Sarah.
Chris, oh my God. Okay, so congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Seriously, congrats. I don't even really know where to begin, but I mean, such a beautiful project. It's so clear from watching this how deeply you are considering kind of all of the various elements in your work, right? Visual, sonic, the interactive elements with the space around you, with your instrument, right? I'm so curious to just hear more from you about the piece in general and why this, like why working in this way is something that's so inspiring to you.
Well, God, there's a lot there. I could talk
Yeah,
about it
it's a
for an
big
hour,
question.
but so I'm on the tail end of my MFA, and I'm up to this point mainly a visual artist, a photographer. And for 3 years now, I've been investigating spaces in nature, primarily swamps. So what drew me to swamps initially, I wasn't really sure, but I've come to figure out they're a very archaic nature. There's a dichotomy there between peace and violence that brings out just a way to look at yourself. So this work's mainly more about me than anything else. It's a very honest look at how I see the world, and I figured out that I look at the world in frequencies. And when I figured that little nugget out, I ran with it. And one of my mentors asked me, what do your images sound like? And that question fascinated me. And a lot of sleepless nights trying to figure out, well, what do they sound like? So I started out with field recordings and using Ableton and all kinds of time stretching and manipulations. And it was cool, but it wasn't enough. So then I found your course, LSS, and fast forward 6 months later, I started using hardware modular. And I've only been using it for 7 months, really, other than BCV Rack to start. So I'm very new to this, and I'm a psycho, I know. And one thing that rules all of my artistic practice is discomfort. I find out when I'm the most uncomfortable is when I really create things that are authentic. So I figured what could be more uncomfortable than taking a huge modular synth with a battery pack into a swamp. So that's kind of the overall premise of the piece. And the idea was to pair my photography with its own song. So every picture, like if I do a show, would have its own soundtrack. So I ended up with a fairly large modular system, larger than I thought I would ever have. So I made all the classic mistakes that I was warned not to do, but I did them anyways. And I figured out, okay, so how do I listen to the swamp? So I started with microphones, and in this piece, I used a 3D spatial microphone. And I also used some biofeedback sensors using the Insta Scion. So I plugged into the root system into a leaf of the cypress tree, and it drove the pulse of the song. It drove the oscillators and a lot of the stuff that was happening with my control, of course. But yeah, I just wanted something that was authentic and that really was driven by the swamp, not just me. So I wanted some semblance of control, but I really wanted it to do what it was going to do. So hopefully I achieved that.
Oh my gosh, did you ever? I mean, you just said so many amazing things. Thanks for telling us a little bit about technically what was going on, the biofeedback. That's super fascinating. I also just want to acknowledge you. You just said you've only been working with modular synthesizers for 9 months. That is mind blowing. That is absolutely incredible. Congratulations on clearly just the dedication that you brought to this to be able to make that much progress in such a short period of time.
Thank you.
The other thing you said that I want to highlight for people, because I think that it's a real golden nugget of wisdom. You said that you kind of you seek out discomfort. When you feel like things are uncomfortable, you go there on purpose with your art making because you know it's going to bring you somewhere new, somewhere authentic to you. I mean, that's just incredible because I think the temptation can be to want to feel safe, right? That's normal. You don't want to feel familiar. You want to feel secure, like you're in control, and you're going places on purpose that you don't have control over. Literally.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I figured, if you're uncomfortable, two things are going to happen. Either it doesn't work out, but you learn something from that, which is a plus, or it works out, and you move the art forward. So that's kind of the way I look at the world.
And, you're taking those risks and it shows like you're doing really, really amazing things. So speaking of risks and speaking of not having control over things, I know, because I've been working closely with you over the last 3 months, that this project, something like this doesn't come together overnight. And I would love to just break it down. Could you break it down a little bit? Like, how does someone go from having this idea, what does, what does what do my photographs sound like, to putting all of this together, this like really amazing video shoot, the biofeedback, the modular synth, the swamp. Can you break that down for us in case someone's watching and they're like, how could I even begin?
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm an experimental artist, so I bring my experience to it. So I was a film and video editor for many years. I did do some audio, was mainly in the film world, not really in the music world, although I did a little bit of that. I was a photographer of all types, everything from weddings to fashion and commercial. I taught photography and audio and all that stuff for many years at a college. So basically, when I had this idea, which I knew was crazy, I spent a lot of time in the swamp photographing. So I figured, how am I going to do this? I just broke it down. I said, what do I need? I need to extract the sound of the swamp. So what are the sounds? And then what do I do with them? I don't want to just hear birds chirping and frogs croaking, although there is some of that, but I want to break them apart. And I found granular synthesis, through Ableton, and then I again found your course and started playing the CV rack, and I saw the potential. Started listening to artists, your work, other artists out there, and it just sparked an idea. I'm like, there's something here. I wasn't sure exactly what it was just yet, but I knew in my gut there was something. So I just progressed with your course, and then I had another crazy idea. Let me do this immersive program amidst my whole thesis, preparation for school and all the other stuff I'm doing. I tend to, put myself underwater a lot, hence the discomfort. But again, it's, if you don't go big, nothing really special happens. So that's kind of the way I live my life. Yeah, it was just there was a lot of little things in the middle, but it was just very much gut instinct. Not really knowing if it was going to work or not. I just had to trust the process.
See, that's huge though. Thank you. That's such a great answer. Like you had this goal, this idea, this curiosity. You had no idea how it was going to work, if it was going to work, or how to do it. So what you did was you broke it down and you said, okay, what's a first next step? And then you took that, right? And then that revealed to you a next possible step, and so on and so on. And I just think that's so important for everyone watching to just think about, right? Sometimes if you can't see the path to get you to the end of your project, we can stop ourselves and be like, well, I don't know how to do that. I don't know how any of that works. But if you just take your first next step and go from there, it can all fall into place, right? And the other thing that I love that you've done, Chris, is you brought all aspects of yourself into this work. Like you said, you used to be a videographer, have that training, combine it all together, right? The more that we can combine all of the quirky facets of our lives and our personalities and our practices together, the more unique our work can become. And I think every single person we're going to hear from today is really embodying that. Yeah. Amazing. Okay, there's one quick question. I mean, there's a bunch of comments in the chat. And again, we're going to bring Chris back up, but I'm also personally curious about this from Marika. Hi, Marika. Was that track one take live?
Yeah, it was. And that was one of my goals. I had to do this live. None of this was in the box other than taking the track from my 4MS recorder on my rack into Ableton and just do a little bit of mastering. I'm not a mastering engineer, but a little EQ, that's about it. So my goal was it had to be live. This was actually the first take, and I knew I had it. We did 2 more. So I had my cameraman out there, happens to be my nephew, who's an amazing DP. Shout out to George. And I was like, I know I have this, so let's do 2 more. Let's get some more angles and stuff. And I ended up using the first take. Yeah.
Wow. Amazing. Very impressive. Well, congratulations again. Thank you so much for sharing this. Yes, I am also inspired. Folks you've got an appropriate name there for this conversation, hearing and frequencies.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Chris. We'll bring you back out in a few minutes. And congratulations. So beautiful. Okay. We're going to move on to the next piece. Thank you all so much for all of your comments in the chat. Thank you again for being here. The next piece that we are going to be hearing is called Chasing Artifacts, and this is composed by Greg Menkoff. So once again, we're going to take a listen, and then I'll bring Greg out for a little chat. Greg.
Hey, Sarah.
Hi.
Hi.
So good. Thank you.
Thank you.
So beautiful. I absolutely love all of the detail, the subtlety in this sound world that you've created. There's so much, little moments of texture and depth, and I felt like sometimes I was like inside the glass that was being cracked open. It
Mhm.
was just such an incredible
Mhm.
experience. Really
Thank you.
beautiful work. Yeah. I I'm curious, can you share a little more with us about your sound design process, how you're creating
Mhm.
these worlds?
Sure. Well, I'm really interested in, I guess, in the DNA of sound in general. In other words, when I hear a sound, I want to know what's in it. And so that's one of the reasons why I like to work a lot with fractured sounds. And I get to that point by stretching and warping and then resampling uh, and doing that again until I start to find nuggets of information that I find to be really interesting. And then I'll throw that in a sampler and I'll start playing. And um, I'm not really sure what I'm going to get, but I always find information that I never expected and information that I can really connect with. And so I'll do that over and over for a few hours until I get this almost like this library of content that I can then begin working a composition with.
It's beautiful. I love that, you know, curiosity is sort of at the heart. It's like an investigation. You have a
Mhm.
sound and you're like, I wonder what would be in this sound if I were to like dig deeper into it. If I could like stretch it apart and fold it on top of itself and like crack it open. I just love that. It's such an interesting way of looking at sound materials.
Yeah, I mean, I love sound, but I also know there's so much more to it than simply what I initially hear, and I want to find those grains that are locked within that context and bring it out and use it in a more forward place in the composition.
Yeah, that's such a beautiful way of approaching things. And your music, I mean, it has this feeling of kind of intimacy with the sounds. Like we're hearing big sounds and tiny sounds, but they always feel kind of like we're right there, like we're experiencing it kind of like at eye level, like you're looking at the table and you can see the marble rolling across, something like that. It just feels very intimate to me. It's really, really beautiful. Um, so something that people who are watching might not know, you have many years of experience working as a sculptor.
Yep.
And I'm curious, I know that one of your goals for working together in this program was to develop a workflow for working with sound and composing music,
Mhm.
right? Um, First, I want to acknowledge you for how deep you went into that goal.
Mhm.
Over the last 3 months, Greg not only developed a workflow for composing music, but he composed an entire piece of music every single week as a way of exploring this process and integrating it. And that's just really impressive, so congrats on that.
Well,
Um, Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I mean, that was such an invaluable experience. Up until I took enrolled in this program, I would be lost in just making sounds and never really going beyond that. And the fact that I was accountable to do a composition a week that was self-imposed uh, really brought me to a whole nother place in terms of how to actually put these sounds together in some type of meaningful context.
Yeah, I mean, and for the record, that was something Greg did and brought on completely for himself. He just decided, "I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do a piece a week." Um, and you did it. And it's really amazing to see. Something that I thought was really cool about what you did, though, is you weren't just making a piece a week. You were making something and then getting feedback, receiving, like thinking about it, deciding, okay, here's how I'm going to develop this idea next time or try this new thing next time. And you were really growing with each iteration. So I'm kind of curious to hear from you. Was there something maybe other than that weekly schedule, something that you found really helpful in finding your ideal workflow?
Well, yeah, I mean, one of the great things about this program was something you introduced, was that what to incorporate visuals into the process of generating ideas. And as a someone with a visual background, I started to slowly get more involved with doing that as our months went on, and I found that to be just incredibly helpful in a way, frankly, that I never anticipated. And it it really, that's what I think was the turning point for me, because there's almost like a marriage of what I have been practicing for like the last 40 years together with this new sound world that I've been looking into the past 10 or 15 years. And it really came together very nicely. It found it struck a balance for me.
Yeah, I remember those moments when you started to kind of integrate those two.
Mm.
It's and this is just something for people who are watching. Um, if you're kind of struggling with some aspect of your practice, it could be anything, getting started, composing, whatever it might be, and you have some other thing that you do and that and that you love, just ask yourself how you might be able to bring that into your work, right? Like Greg had all of these years of experience doing visual stuff. And so it was a really easy kind of link that maybe he had just never really considered. Be like, well, instead of just thinking about how your sounds are going to be organized, what happens if you draw? What happens if you map it out visually? And now all of a sudden he's tapping into this part of his creative voice that is so developed and so available to him, right?
What's interesting is the drawing that I chose for this piece. I did that drawing like 25 years ago, and I went to a series of work that I thought was appropriate for today, and it made me realize that I think to some extent I may have been drawing sound all along.
Interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
It was a really nice discovery.
Oh, that's really nice. Well, I'm so excited to hear where this leads you and how things keep folding and stretching and unfolding and cracking
Thank you.
apart in your
So
sonic
am I.
world.
So am I.
Yeah. I'm just going to share a couple comments from the folks who are listening. Hector says this was gorgeous, really impressive, defined voice.
Thank you.
Sorry, beautiful, intricate microarchitecture. I love these observations, folks. This is really nice. Very chill and peaceful with enormous space and depth.
Mhm.
Couldn't agree more.
I like that. Thank you.
Well,
That's what I'm
congrats.
going for.
Yes. Amazing. Congratulations, Greg.
Thank you, Sarah.
Really beautiful work.
Thank you.
I'm going to bring you back in a few minutes, but for
Okay.
now, I will put you backstage and we're going to move on to the next piece. Okay, so the next work we are going to be listening to is called The Chariot, and this is composed by Bruce Reynoso. Once again, we're going to take a listen first, and then I will bring Bruce up and we will have a little chat. All right, here we go. Bruce.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi, it's so good. Oh, thank you for that. It's a beautiful piece. I just want to say the moment it started playing, people in the comments were talking, they were like, electric horses, I'm in space. So it was very much coming through. And speaking of being in space, I love that you're joining us from, looks like a few blocks away from Jupiter, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it's been a long journey.
I bet. I love so much how you combine these, orchestral, this orchestral instrumentation with field recordings, with all of these kind of experimental synth sound design techniques. It just creates such a unique world that I have truly not heard anything like. It's really, really beautiful what you're doing. Can you tell us
Thank
a little bit for folks who don't know what about this piece and the project that it is a part of?
Certainly. So this is a part of my album, which I hope to release at the beginning of November, called Starry Messenger, which is one possible English translation of the title of Galileo's treatise that he published when he discovered the moons of Jupiter back here. And it's a composer's journey outward from Earth to Jupiter, with orbits around Earth's moon and Mars' moons and the 4 Galilean moons of Jupiter, plus there's music for the transits between the planets. And it's not programmatic, and it's not about the images, although I found so much inspiration in myth and in science and in medieval art, and then it all just sort of came together in my head. And in this one, I was trying to get the sense of motion and of the moon being a chariot going across the sky, and the moon making tides ebb and flow, and things speed up and slow down and rotate and revolve. And as you know, that was a real challenge. And then there were some happy accidents. With the orchestral samples, finding the right place for those to go, and little field recording from a ferry boat crossing the Cape Fear River. So it was a mixture of a lot of things. So that's what it was made up of, and also what it's a part of.
Yeah. Bruce, I just have to say, I've been, watching you work on this album for the last few months, and the amount of just care and thoughtfulness and courage that you are bringing into this work is tremendous. And so I really want to acknowledge you for that. It's deep. It's a big project. Making a body of work of this size is a big deal. And actually, on that, here's a milestone that we can all celebrate with you. It's officially done, right? Bruce's album, The Starry Messenger, is getting mastered as we speak. So for any of you who have ever made an album of music, you know how much goes into that. Drop a little emoji, a little sign of support in the chat to celebrate Bruce, because this is huge. This is a big deal. So congratulations. How does it feel?
Oh, it feels really good. And I don't want to say it was exhausting, but it was. It sounds wrong to say it was really an effort, but the joy of creation was really the thing I guess I'll focus on. And I'm so pleasantly surprised by the result, or so pleasantly satisfied by the result. When I listen to all of it now, and I listen to it all the way through, I think, well, this really does work.
Yeah. I just want you to see that you're getting a lot of
a
lot of love from the cheering squad. Yeah, Bruce, it's an amazing accomplishment. So something that I'm curious to hear your thoughts on, when you're working on a project this big that can span so many months, it can be, there's so much to do, right? From initial ideation, coming up with inspiration, mapping out the project, coming up with the sounds, composing, recording, editing, mixing everything. I'm curious to hear from you how you maintained momentum through that, because it can be, easy to get stuck or just get exhausted, like you said, and kind of give up halfway and abandon a project halfway. So what did you find that was helpful, or what did you do to like stay committed and to see it through to the finish line?
Well, you have to practice every day. You have to get up and do the work. And some days you work for days and then you realize, oh, this is not working. And that happened when I was writing the music for the orbit around Callisto. And I just had to throw it all out and go back to the core of the thing and start over. And some days when you're practicing, as someone said, the muse shows up and this wonderful thing comes out and surprises you and you run with it. So daily practice is a huge part of it. You just have to show up. Also, my training as a composer, classical training as a composer, helps me to be able to think about form and structure, and helps me to think about how to take elements of music that I'm writing now and put it somewhere back at the beginning of the piece, or writing something in the middle and realizing there were things at the beginning that would work here too. And then, the other thing that really helped was this CEIP program, the input from my cohort, the feedback and guidance that you gave, and like that piece we just heard, a great bit of it was made with the make noise morphogene, right? And the only reason I had any hope at all of doing that, and I think there was a math connected to the morphogene, was because I had gone through the whole learning sound and synthesis program too, and learned about oscillators and filters and all of those, skew limiters and all those other wonderful things. So practice, discipline, training, and, good feedback from a group of people who were listening and supportive. How's that?
I mean, it's great. Asking for feedback can be hard. It can be really vulnerable, but the last 3 months, you've just done such an amazing, job of taking what I love to refer to as, and anyone who's a student of mine in any class or program will hear me say this, imperfect action, right? I'm doing this thing. It's not perfect. That's not even the goal. The goal is to show up. Like you said, that is so powerful. That is like 80% of it, at least. Show up every day in some way for your creative practice. It doesn't have to be that you're producing something every day. There does not have to be a tangible result, but let your mind imagine something every day. Like, go there at least a little. And that way you are making constant progress. And share your work when it's not done, when it's messy and half finished. That is the best time to get feedback. So you were such a great example of that, Bruce. And congratulations again on this amazing piece and album. So just remind us again, it's coming out in the fall. You said maybe November?
With any luck, early November.
Okay.
With really good luck, early November and maybe mid-November, but as soon as I can possibly release it.
We can't wait. Okay. And for everyone watching, I just want to also let you know, if you haven't seen yet, in the description below this video, there are links to everyone's social media platforms. So I would definitely encourage you to go follow these amazing people. That's probably the best way to stay caught up about when all of this music is being released. All right. We will definitely let you know. Yeah, some folks are asking, let us know. Bruce, let everyone know. Don't be shy. All right. Congratulations. Thank you so much. We're going to bring you back up on screen in a few minutes. But for now, I'm going to move on to the next piece. Okay. This next work is called Run. And this is performed and composed by Dmitri Sereda. So without further ado, I will bring up that work, and then we will bring Dimitri on to have a little chat. Dimitri, hi. So beautiful. Thank you. Honestly,
Thank you.
gorgeous. Gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. I love all of the all the little crackly sounds, all the little resonant. I don't know. Someone in the chat said resonant sprinkles, I think. I love that. Yes, here it is. I'm going to pull that up. Resonant sprinkles. So good. Congratulations. Can you tell us about what your process is from this is going to sound like a big question. I want to know what your process is for making music. Where do you begin? Do you start with an idea? Do you start with a sound? How does that go?
Depends. So like this particular one started with a bunch of sounds. So like with a bunch of recordings, some of them like field recordings, some of them recordings of the me playing piano, which I did like quite some months ago, but just like was skimming through the catalog, found, spotted, and for example, the harmony context, this chords at the beginning, this pad, white, lush sounds, they're actually stemming from the granulated, textured, stretched piano sample. And that's providing this kind of smooth, calming environment, like the initial part of the track. And the idea was to provide something kind of contrasting. So like where the listener will be delivered at the end. So like kind of transitioning from the familiar space into the unsettling, uneasy, and something uncomfortable or less comfortable. So yeah, on top of this kind of piano based pads, there's also a bunch of field recordings, like also something comforting, like it's actually recording I did in the park, like it's a lovely day, also something which sets up the stage. And yeah, later mangling with these recordings heavily, so like the overall, like the middle part, the transition part is also just a bunch of layers, a variety of layers of different ambience recordings, stretched, reverbed till I don't know, till vulgar state and yeah, so that kind of thing. And later we're coming to the part which I wanted to be a bit less settling, so like something where you don't really feel comfortable, and that's where the kick comes in. And yeah, this part is just a classic modular sine-based kick, triggered, like slightly distorted also, and triggered by a sequence, but actually two Euclidean sequences which overlap. They are different in length and they overlap together and slightly shifted. So that creates kind of this erratic pattern, which you cannot, like, it's not that easy to find where it begins because it really rarely repeats itself. So, and that's what I wanted to also kind of achieve and convey, that like, even though the kick is there and usually you expect something like a foundational or grounding effect from that. So like, sonically something like that is present, but at the same time it doesn't really give you the sense of settlement, or like it doesn't give me at least a sense of settlement, and I hope somebody at least feel the same. So like, yeah, and the overall idea is like this transition, that path from one comfortable, familiar and soothing space into place where you should be worried about things.
Yeah, it was super effective. Okay, so you started with sounds just by going back through your archives and finding a sound that caught your ear. Super interesting. It's so amazing to see how it kind of built up from there. And I think this idea of the transition from the familiar to, you know, unfamiliar was really effectively accomplished in the piece, for sure. It was really beautiful. Some folks are saying that they're just feeling understandably inspired. This is making me want to make music. I agree, Tara, for sure. Okay, so Dimitri, I'm curious to hear about the performance part of this, because I know that one of your goals early on that you expressed in CEIP was not only, you know, working on your compositional work and process, but being able to perform your compositions, right? So can you talk to us a little bit about how you've been going about kind of exploring that? Do you compose first in a specific way and then adapt it for performance, or just how are you thinking about those two worlds?
Kind of like, that's something what changed about like the approach for working with modular in general, like during the course. And the simple trick which worked for me was kind of annotating patches differently, or like thinking about patches differently. So like I used to think of them from the perspective, like let's say from the hardware perspective. Okay, what type of technique, what type of trick am I doing? Like what type of technique are you using? Or is it that I know this particular workflow or this particular model and so on. But like the shift was into the rather characteristics of the sound. So like, okay, this patch is like, can be complex, it can be simple, whatever, but it actually provides you that kind of sonic effect. So like basically transitioning from track details into kind of emotional level or like perceptual level somehow. And like when you start notating things in that way, or like using cards and like juggling that bits of like the emotional elements rather than just like the dry technical element, that helps surprisingly.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I find that too. When I'm thinking about notating and documenting patches for live performance, I'm always focusing more on, what is the character of this sound? What is the identity? How does the interaction work? And less about, okay, what module is plugged into what other module, or like, how is this sound produced on a technical level? I'm really glad that was helpful for you. That's really interesting. Here's another comment here. Oh, actually, sorry, a little question from the audience. How much of your composition is performed live rather than being pre-recorded samples?
I would say that pretty much 95% of that is performed live, but using pre-recorded samples. So like these samples are also like quite kind of granular, kind of smaller bits of audio. Like sometimes like they are mixed and mangled so that they're completely indistinguishable. But like what I do prepare is like the patch itself. So like I prepare like this set of patches, which I know how I can potentially transition between. And what I also prepare for specifically for the kind of longer, like, or kind of sonicscape-ish field recordings is just like the set of scenes on the octave track. So like you can actually completely disassemble and assemble in a new way this kind of familiar and well-known sonic scapes. So yeah, this set of scenes are prepared and like a set of patches. But like, yeah, during the performance, you're pretty much just navigating between.
Yeah.
So like, I'm not really doing much repatching in this particular example. So it's just rather, yeah,
right,
mixing and controlling modulation a bit.
Yeah, beautiful. Okay, thanks for answering that. Are you working? Is this piece part of a larger collection for you, or are you working towards?
Yeah,
something?
that piece is going to be on the album which I'm working on right now. So like it's one of the tracks there, and yeah, that's coming. I'm pretty much settled with the arrangement of the track. So like mixing is coming. I don't know how long this would take, but it will be
But
tedious.
it's coming.
Yeah, so yeah, it's coming.
Amazing. I can't wait to hear it. Please keep us posted. Thank you for this
Sure.
preview. And congratulations. It's really on this really, really beautiful work and all of your progress over the last few months. It's been really inspiring to see. Okay, we're going to bring Dimitri back in a few minutes as well. For now, I'll put you backstage. Thanks again, Dimitri. And that brings us to Sensor. And we're going to hear a piece that Sensor put together called Dream Collage 1, which is made up of 5 different pieces that have been collaged together and paired with visuals that were created using hardware video synthesizers and also Touch Designer. So without further ado, I will pull up this piece, Dream Collage 1 by Sensor. Hi, Sensor. So good. You know, I gotta say that reveal at the end when it clarifies into the moon and you realize what you're looking at, it gets me every time. It's so good. So
Oh,
good.
thanks. I was looking for
Yeah.
that ending, like you're doing your tonic chord.
Well executed. It's really beautiful. Um, I have so many questions going through my head, but I'm where I wanna start, this is something I always wonder about when people work with so many different types of media like you do, visuals and sound and all of these things. How does that process typically work for you? If there is one way, you know, do you start with sound? Do you start with visuals? Do they kind of simultaneously emerge?
It's, just kind of a combination of either way. Sometimes visual or ideal, or sometimes a sound, just kind of click things off. I kind of love just entering the muse phase and just something might, oh, that's interesting. And maybe I've just seen or hear something and kind of starts the process.
And a lot of the I know a lot of the techniques that are used in video synthesis, for example, are really the same and similar to sound synthesis, which is so cool. Um, and you're kind of exploring some crossover there in your work. So maybe something you'll explore a technique in the sound domain, and it might inspire you to try a similar thing in your visual synthesis as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Like the beginning of that piece with the moon and Earth in visual, that effect is known feedback. And so, we can do audio feedback, but I didn't know he could do visual feedback. So when I learned that process, I was like, oh, that's really cool. So I began to see these relations that were intertwined in the visual to audio world.
Yeah. Absolutely. I love that feedback technique. It's so beautiful. Someone in the audience is asking, is there a direct influence of the sound on the visuals or vice versa?
Yeah, that's a kind of interesting question. So in video synthesis, you can actually take from the synthesizer, from your audio synthesizer modular, you can actually feed it reactive uh, LFOs and audio rate signals if you
Mhm.
want at the same time. And you can have them sync or unsync. They can be random. So, and you can also play the video synthesizer like an instrument as well, which was very fascinating to me when I started that, because that's exactly what I wanted to do. I still wanted this, coming from playing a tactile instrument like the piano, I still wanted to have that feeling when I went into modular work.
Right. So there's a little bit of influence, it sounds like, coming in all directions. The sound can influence
Yes,
the visuals can influence the sound. You can interact with both.
yes,
Yeah, that's super
absolutely.
interesting. Thanks for answering that question. So, Steve, okay, something that I want to celebrate in the spirit of celebration, that I want to celebrate you, for you, or with you, that I have really seen you do over the last few months is jump headfirst into things. Steve is the kind of person who, will have an idea and be like, I wonder how that works, or I have no idea how that works. And then instead of kind of closing off and being like, well, that might be too difficult, you just have this way of going, let's see, let's let's try and let's just jump in. And so I'm curious, you know, what's your perspective, or what's something that maybe you could share for other people who are watching, like a little bit of, advice or a perspective about getting started with something new?
Just jump in, try it out. I think some of the words earlier were like the accidents. Things just kind of happen. What I have found in life is you can just take those as extra tools for your tool set and enjoy. For instance, on this piece, the second and third piece were actually from an instrument I learned from you, Sarah, the no input mixer. And I just went and got one and built one, and that's my other. Now I have two new instruments from you: the no input mixer and the feedback pedals, effect
Awesome.
pedals. And now they're like new tool set. And if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't have these new sound tools to
Yeah.
work with. So I always think it's great to just go open, experiment, take the risk. What's there to lose? Look at all the gains, right? It's like,
Yes. I love that perspective so much. Yeah, what is there to lose, right? You'll learn something new, you'll make some cool sounds. Maybe
yeah,
you'll find a new technique or tool or idea that leads you to something that you can't even conceive of right now because it doesn't exist yet in your
absolutely,
world. That's so inspiring.
right.
Thank you. I love that. Okay. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Sensor. I really appreciate this. Yeah, Howard is vibing with this. What is there to lose? Exactly. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts.
Sure.
And congrats on this piece. All
Thank you.
right. We'll bring you back in a few moments And if there are any questions from the folks watching that I haven't gotten to yet, just a reminder, we're going to bring everyone back momentarily. So hang tight. But for now, I have something exciting. We're going to move into well, before we do that, let's just have a little round of applause for these amazing artists, these amazing musicians. We have just heard 6 incredible pieces. I am so blown away by how unique and individual every single one of these works is. And so, yeah, I just want to say congrats to all of you for jumping in, for taking risks, and for sharing this with all of us, and also giving us a little bit of a glimpse into your creative process and how these works come together. All right. For that round of applause, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to bring everyone on stage. Surprise! People who are sitting backstage having a little nap. Here you are. Now you can see the folks that we're congratulating. There we go. That makes more sense. Woo, look at all these little clapping emojis. This is amazing. Congratulations to you all and your unique musical voices. Yes, absolutely. Okay, but don't go away because we're not done. So do not navigate away from this live stream because we are not done yet. While you're all up here on the screen, I'm going to introduce the next and final section of this showcase kind of program for today. So the last piece of music that we're going to listen to today, before we open up into more of a discussion and a Q&A with all of the artists, is an improvised piece that was created by all 6 of the people that you see here on this screen. And this piece is a little bit unusual. And so I'm going to explain kind of what the context is behind it, so that you understand what you're about to hear. So to create this improvised piece of music, they used a process that I introduced to everyone inside of CEIP that is called imaginative listening. And the idea behind imaginative listening is that you collaborate with other people and you make music with them without being able to see or hear them. Okay. So there's no pre-planning. There's no discussion of like what key we're going to play in or what instruments we're going to use or anything at all. The whole idea is that we choose a day and a time that everyone's going to gather in their own studios or at their own instruments simultaneously to listen imaginatively and to record. But again, they can't see each other. They can't hear each other. They have no idea what everyone else is doing. They're all recording their individual tracks, just imagining what might this other person be doing? How might what I'm contributing fit into this? And that's the creative challenge. So then the way that it works is after everyone records, they upload their track into a folder. I take all of those tracks and I just line up the very beginning in a DAW. I'm not doing any other editing at all, just a little bit of mixing to make sure that the levels are relatively balanced. And that's it. And that is it. So this might sound like a crazy process to some of you. It is definitely a little bit of an experiment, but what I've discovered over the many years of doing this is that when this is approached with a certain level of sincerity and commitment on behalf of the people who are doing the imaginative listening, it is incredible what emerges. There is always some astonishing kind of synchronicities and beautiful coincidences that occur. And it's really powerful to just see how the simple act of listening can unite an ensemble of performers who are spread out across the entire world. And that is the whole idea behind this. So that's what we're going to listen to. And just for the record, none of us have heard this. We are all hearing this for the first time right now. So thank you for joining us for this experience. We're going to take a listen to this imaginative listening collaboration. Then we're going to bring everyone back on stage and we're going to have a group chat about what we just heard and answer some questions. So I'll put everyone here back one at a time. Boop, boop, boop. All right. And without further ado, I'll cue up the collaborative and imaginative listening. All right. Oh my gosh. I'm going to bring everyone back. That was such an incredible sonic journey. Wow. That's amazing. I'm so curious to hear. Okay, Steve, you're laughing. You're giggling up a storm. Let's hear your thoughts. What was it like listening to that for the
Well,
first time?
I'm just blown away when I hear this because it's such a great, it's such a great compositional tool. I never would have thought about doing something like that.
Yeah.
And just how well it fits together. It's just amazing.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I'm curious, what was it like? Okay, Chris, what was it like for you doing this, having to, just trust this process, record without hearing anybody, and like tap into your imagination as your only source of connection to all of these people? What was that like for you?
Yeah, it's a really interesting experience because we had that 5 minutes of silence. So you basically had the recording running with silence, and in your mind, you kind of go to where all the cohorts are and imagine, where they're at in their thought process, and you just go forward, and it's serendipitous. It just works. I can't explain the science behind it, or it's just the universe coming together and putting us all in sync. So it was really cool.
That's right. The 5 minutes of silence is an important part that I forgot to mention, but part of this, I think it's really important. Before you start making sound, you just sit and listen because, there's so much to hear, right? And as we go through our days, zipping around, all of this, we're hearing probably only a small percentage of the actual sound around us, right? So this idea of just slowing down, pausing, listening for 5 minutes. And I always share the idea with everyone in CEIP that if you could imagine that you could just take your ears off of your head and float them out to the corners of the room and float them out to the edges of your neighborhood or your city and float them out to the edges of your country and just see how much can you hear and how connected can you be with the sounds in your environment and the sounds in the whole world around you. And then bring all of that presence and awareness and listening into your improvisation. Yeah. So you all can try that. You can try it even when you're on your own. You don't need a group of people to work with. Just see what happens when you listen in that way. There are some comments here. Hector says, I don't believe this was improvised. They just said that to make themselves look better. I promise. This was definitely done the way that I said it was. That is so funny. Timothy is saying, I'm curious if everyone dialed back a bit to make room for one another. So that's kind of an interesting question. Maybe Richard, do you want to talk a little bit about that? Like, were you consciously thinking about dialing back, or how were you approaching things in that way?
I did try to stay conscious of the fact that I was going to be one out of 6 layers, so I wanted to make sure that, I didn't want to, I would say hang back a little bit, but mostly it was more about kind of cycling through, thinking of everybody in the group and, the personalities that people bring to the table and the connection to the music they create. And I think that just kind of naturally, I think Dimitri would do something here, or I think Bruce would do something here, those kind of thoughts were popping up. So it wasn't so much laying back as actually thinking about the people that you were giving a little bit of space to, because they probably would be doing something.
Yeah. Yeah, that's super interesting. Well, congrats, everyone. This was awesome to hear. So cool. I know I'm definitely going to be listening to it again a few times to catch all of the inner layers and all of the beautiful moments. So I'm going to open up now, folks who are in the audience listening. We're going to do just a little chat to wrap things up today, a little Q&A. So if any of you have questions for the group or for a specific artist, you can go ahead and put them in the comments. And I'm going to start off by asking, let's see, I'm going to ask Greg, reflecting back on the last few months, what's one thing that you learned about yourself creatively that maybe surprised you?
Well, I think that what surprised me the most was that, as with everybody else, we all have our own voice, and I think the most challenging thing that we can do in any creative field is digging through all the baggage to find our voice, and to give yourself the permission to make mistakes, and frankly, not be like anybody else. In other words, no one can make music or artwork as well as you, and you have to try to find what your voice is, and that process can be really messy and sloppy and frustrating, but if you swing for the fences, similar to what Chris was referring to earlier, you're bound to find it. You just have to keep on persevering. And I think that's what I discovered the most in this program. I had never thought that I would produce 6 compositions or 7 compositions, or how many it is, in such a short period of time. And along the way, it was, of course, very frustrating at times. But then there's always the next day, and you go back to work again, and you just take it one day at a time, and you begin to reveal something that you only had a sense of, and then it becomes something tangible.
That's so good. Thank you, Greg. That is so beautiful. Wow. Okay. I'm so glad I asked you that question. Thank you so much for sharing these thoughts. Yeah. This is, figuring out, finding our creative voices, learning our craft, all of that. It's not a straight line. It's not a perfect process. It's not something that we just say, okay, we're going to do this, and then we do it. It's messy. It's like loop-de-loops and a big squiggly messy ball, It's a big feedback loop. And I think that that's so important to just embrace that process. This is a process, the whole thing. And every day we show up, and every day we take another step. Some days it's a success. Some days it's a failure. Technically, my belief about failures. They're all just stepping stones, right? That's so great. Thank you so much for sharing that. There's a couple questions from people in the audience. One for Steve. Steve, how long did it take you to get comfortable with Touch Designer?
Oh, that's a good question. I know that person. I think right away. The concepts. I'd kind of been working with Max and MSP Jitter before coming to Touch Designer. So the concept of Touch Designer was to Jitter. So it was just really learning the language of Touch Designer. So not very long.
Mm-hmm. Not very long, because you already had some background, but
yeah, I had a similar background with Max MSP.
Gotcha.
And what's funny about that? Also, those programs work just like modulars, where you have to connect objects with patch cords.
Right.
So
you had some background in that too. So it kind of totally awesome. Okay, cool. Thank you. Maybe that will give some confidence to someone who might be curious about getting into Touch Designer.
Sure.
This is a question for Bruce. Timothy says Timothy said, assuming that this was a conscious choice, your orchestral voicings weren't as present in that collab we just listened to. How did you come to that decision? So I guess the question is, maybe, were you thinking about that differently? Maybe thinking about how you were approaching your sound design differently?
Well, it was intentional not to have them front in the mix. And it was just a matter of listening and discovering, how they fit together. And, there was a fair amount of automation drawing, a lot of automation curves in there to bring them in and out and left and right and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
And how did I come to that decision? Well, it's what sounded right. I was just listening.
Yeah. Great. Yeah. Follow the sound. Trust your ears. That's such a great way to make decisions. All right. Here's one more coming in from the audience, and this one's not directed to anyone in particular. Why don't we start with Richard? I'm just kind of curious. The question is, what prompted you to decide that now was the time to join CEIP?
I think that I just felt a sense of frustration with the, progress that I was making in my own composition, meeting a lot of sort of dead ends and just not really being able to get beyond a certain hump, to begin to get things finished, and especially to be able to feel like I'm creating from the heart and not, kind of like creating to order or creating within a certain tradition or what have you. And, it was just a sense that it would be a really good thing to be able to get feedback, to be able to work with other people who were like-minded. And, and it was also just kind of a whim of the moment. It was what I decided to do this summer.
Yeah.
And, also I had a conversation beforehand with Sarah that really convinced me that it was a good time and a good thing to do.
Sometimes you just have that kind of call it a whim or a gut instinct or whatever it is. But sometimes you just kind of have a knowing. You're like, okay, this is my next step. This is my next chapter. This is what I need to do or want to do. Just to round this question out, I'm kind of curious, Greg, how are you feeling? Richard, sorry. Mm-hmm. How are you feeling, now? Especially that comment about making music from the heart and not making music from what you're supposed to do or what's expected.
Yeah. Well, I feel a sense of confidence that anything I do is going to result in something. That doesn't mean it's going to result in a finished work or something I want to share or make public or whatever, but I know that it's going to give me another step of progression to understanding my own creative process, understanding what I want to express. And, so it comes down to, I think, momentum, confidence. There's a lot of encouragement in this group to share and get feedback, and I've learned that's very new for me, and I see that's extremely valuable, and intend to continue that.
Good. Yes. Keep going. What you're doing, all of you, is so amazing. So definitely keep going. Okay. Here's a question that I will pose to Dimitri. I'm curious, what is one challenge that you faced or experienced at some point during your creative work over the last few months? This is, I know, a big question, but just if you can think of one particular challenge you encountered, what was it and how did you overcome it?
One particular challenge, good question. So if to boil down to just one, I would say it was really hard for me to slow down the mind and kind of to make things quiet around you in terms of the external noise and external signals or the bits of information which constantly floods in. So because I just never tried to do that I always used to consume a lot sonically, visually, and emotionally. So trying to stop doing that was at first tricky, but also I would say that's the biggest thing that really helps.
Yeah. Slowing down.
Yeah, that's kind of coming to that point of okay, it's not just showing up regularly, but showing up more as yourself. And when you isolate that external noise and fluff, So you actually can do that more, like creating things from the position, actually what I wanted to say. Not the thing which I wanted to try or like the cool concept which I read about, but rather, yeah, what's the message?
Right. And sometimes in order for those thoughts and ideas and that like you-ness to really have space to emerge, you've just got to slow, right? You've got to create that space. That's so beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I've got so many questions. Okay, here's one coming in from the audience. Maybe we can offer this one over to Chris. Is there a recommended length of time per day that you might suggest to practice or find your voice?
24 hours? No, I'm just kidding. It depends. I mean, for me, I try to have a practice where every day I touch the synth. You know, every day I wrote about things that inspired me to make the art and the music. Writing was a big part of it. A generative writing practice for me is super important. But as far as a synthesizer, for me especially, everyone else here is much more experienced with music than I am. But I was learning more about playing the actual instrument while I was learning about why we create the music all at the same time. So for me, you know, morning practice sessions of trying out this patch or this module and learning more about a specific module, and then maybe in the evening trying to make something with it, and then slowly building a patch and practicing it. So every day, really, maybe one day is an hour, one day is 6 hours. It depends on my busy schedule. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'll just piggyback on there to say that, you know, if you are in a situation right now where you don't have 6 hours or even an hour a day, I really want to encourage you to just not let that stop you from showing up and exploring, because truly, you know, I've been through periods of my life where all I have is 10 minutes a day. And it's like squeezed in between some morning errands and obligations. And it still counts and it still will make a result. It will be like the progress you'll make over 6 months showing up 10 minutes a day. It will be noticeable. And I mean, it will absolutely be more than if you didn't do it, right? So I know it can be really hard sometimes to feel motivated if you have a really busy schedule and you don't have a lot of time to carve out, but just trust me, even 10 minutes a day, anything that you can do, any way that you can show up for what you're doing, it matters and it will make an impact. I'm a really big believer in not so much, the impact of one session, like, oh, I have 6 hours today, but more about the compounding effect of showing up over and over and over again, day in, day out, over many, many months. That's, I think, going to have a bigger impact. So yeah, like Chris said, 24 hours a day, that's what we're going for. No, but I think it's great what you said too about, sometimes you'll do something in the morning and another thing in the evening and that kind of thing. Break it up and yeah. Okay. I want to ask, let's see, there's a question actually that came in for me. This is a question for you, Sarah, if you don't mind. Do you think there's some minimum familiarity with ownership of different modules that would make participation in CEIP feasible? Hector, if you're asking about modular synth modules, then the answer is, in short, is no. There's no requirement to own or play any kind of synthesizer at all. If that's not quite what you mean, what I'd love to ask you to do is to send me a message after we're done this live stream, and I'm happy to chat more with you. But as you can see here, because I do a lot of work with electronics and modular synths, it so happens that all of these wonderful people in some way work with electronic instruments. It's not a requirement, though, at all. If you check out the previous showcase, you'll see people playing all kinds of different instruments, and it is definitely not an obligation or requirement. Okay. I would love to ask, let's see, Greg, what is one piece of advice or encouragement that you would like to offer to someone who's watching?
Follow your heart. Seriously. You have to trust your instincts and believe in that your choices are the right choices. And you have to cut through the noise that you can receive 360 degrees all around you. And if you just listen to your inner voice, you will be rewarded.
So good. Thank you. Follow your heart. Follow your heart. Follow your inner voice. Follow those things, those ideas that light you up. The things that make you feel buzzy, the things that make you go, ooh, I want to do that. That's so cool. Even if no one else is doing it, right? Maybe especially if no one else is doing it. Like, go there. You deserve that. That's so good, Greg. Thank you so much for sharing. And I actually think that is a really nice place maybe for us to wrap up for today. I think that's a really nice message to end on. So what I want to do at this point is ask you all to join me in another huge round of emoji applause for these incredible artists on the screen. Thank you so much, Bruce, Greg, Dimitri, Chris, Sensor, Richard, for sharing your work, for sharing your thoughts, for being so open about your creative process and your vulnerabilities and all of this. Thank you. It's so inspiring to watch. Thank you so much for everyone who has joined in the conversation in the chat and has tuned in live. If you are a musician or an artist who is craving support right now to unlock your creative voice, to clarify your workflow and your creative process so that you can make and finish more music that you love, more music that feels like a true expression of yourself, I would absolutely love to invite you to apply for the Creative Electroacoustic Immersion program. If you are curious about it, if you want to chat more with me about how it works or see if it's the right fit for you, if you have any questions at all, I would love for you to just send me a message anytime. You can send me an email. You can find me on any of the social media platforms and send me a message there. I would love to set up a call with you and we can chat more. And I did just see Marika's question come in the chat about how many times this program runs. And the answer to that is typically 2 times a year. Okay, so the next enrollment, the next round of CEIP will begin early in the new year in 2024. However, applications are open, and if you're curious, what I would recommend to do is just send me a message, get your application in early. That just gives you more of a head start, gets you more time to kind of get going with things. Any final words from any of the wonderful folks up here on the screen? Bruce, Greg, Chris, Sensor, Dimitri, Richard?
Yeah, well, just a big thank you to you, Sarah. Your support has been
absolutely
just perfect and immeasurable. So thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you, Sarah.
Thank you so much, Sarah.
Oh, thank you all.
Yeah. Ditto. Agreed.
Okay, huge congratulations to all of you. It has been such an incredible joy to support you all over the last few months. I cannot wait to see what the future holds for you. I know with confidence that the best is yet to come for all of you. And please don't be shy. Share your work, your albums, your projects, your galleries, your exhibitions when they are available. I know for one, I really want to hear everything. And I think everyone in the chat really does too. So please share. And thank you all so much for watching and listening. We will see you next time. Bye for now, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.